On today's episode, we head to the high seas for some old age, some might say ancient, pirate-style torture that was used less by pirates and more by the British, French, and Dutch Navy. Now, where the stories of mutineers and stowaways having to walk the plank may be set in myth and imagination, the fairly well-documented use of today's method of torture is seen as a gruesome, bloody, and terrifying truth. Just by using a rope, maybe some weights, the ship itself, and some very unforgiving sea life, captains of vessels of all sizes were able to strike fear in the hearts of their crew and passengers. Seen in movies like 1962's Mutiny on the Bounty, starring Marlon Brando and Richard Harris, and seen in graphic detail on the Starz program Black Sails, which I highly recommend. Today, we are covering the practice of keel hauling. I'm Kevin Young.
And I'm his first mate, Dan.
And this is Torture.
Cue music.
Oh, shit. All right. Yeah, I've been wanting to get to this one for a while, but I was like, I don't want to jump into it right away. But I don't know, just going out into the ocean for some torture. It's to me, that's terrifying. The ocean is terrifying to me.
Yeah, it's completely utterly terrifying, to be fair. Like, it's... Yeah.
Like, just the thought of being, like, on a big ship in the middle of the ocean and jumping into the ocean, even to go for a swim, is terrifying to me.
I did it once. Not right in the very center of the ocean, right? Like, that was far more than deep enough to warrant shitting yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But, it was an experience, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm not the strongest swimmer. I sink more than I float, and there's just it's so fucking huge.
Yep.
And God knows what's in there. More than likely, when you're in the middle of the ocean, there's absolutely nothing around you. But that might be even scarier than there being everything around you. There's just nothingness.
Yeah, sure. Isn't it true though that apparently we know more about what's out in space than we know about the bottom of our oceans?
Yeah.
Or what's in the ocean in general. Like.
Yeah. Because we can get to space a lot easier than you can get to the bottom of the ocean. Because you go down too far, you start getting crushed. Yeah, the ocean is terrifying to me. I've been to it, but I only go so far in, and then I come back. And that's it.
See, we only have the problem of it being very, very cold here is our biggest issue with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ireland, it's very cold water.
Yep.
The only place I've really been to the ocean is in Florida, and the water's not cold. The Bahamas, that's not where we were. Really wasn't an ocean; it was more of a cove, like Gilligan's Island type cove.
That's still bad enough because that's kind of what I had the experience of going into deep. Sorry, that's the experience I had going into deep water from a boat was in a cove. That's more than deep enough and still far enough away from land to make you be very nervous of it if you weren't confident in the water, you know. So
yeah, well, I went in from the beach, and then when I got to you go out. You go out probably 20, 25 feet, and then there was like a ledge that dropped down. And once I got to that ledge, I turned around and came back because I was like, nope, not doing it. I mean, I was only like 13 at the time, and I was a horrible swimmer. So going out that far was good enough for me. I mean, it was beautiful, but no ocean for me. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this so bad is because I feel like this one is absolutely terrifying. So people who don't know what keel hauling is, or it doesn't ring, or maybe it rings a bell a little bit, think back to all the TV shows or movies you've ever seen with pirates in them, and they're keel hauled a lot of them and all that shit. That's what it is. But pirates didn't really do this.
Disappoints me.
Yeah.
Because one reason I was excited about it was the whole thing about, we had to talk about pirates.
Pirates, we will cover the horrible things pirates did to people down the road, hopefully. I say hopefully because with these things, you never know exactly how long shit's going to go. But hopefully down the road, we will get to the horrible things pirates did to one another, because they did some horrible shit, like cutting men's lips off and then making them eat them and all that type of stuff. It was dark.
This is weird.
Give me your lip. Arr, now eat it.
They cut their arse off, cut their anus off and make them eat it. That'd be funny.
They did some,
weird
shit.
This little puckered hoop is handed to them. Here you go. Eat that.
Like calamari.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of calamari. I don't know about it. Again, we're talking about food. I don't know about it in Ireland, but a lot of the calamari here, it's not technically squid. If you get it at like a store or something like that, a lot of time it's just the leftover pig asshole that they chop up.
Really?
Because it looks the same.
All right. No, I never.
That is.
I guarantee you, it does not taste the same.
That is what I've never eaten pig asshole, so I don't know.
I'm sure you could probably tell the difference between pork and some form of aquatic
Probably.
Like, you know, I believe I'd be able to tell the difference anyway. Like, you know, it's very different color for one thing. So,
well, I'm sure they probably bleach it. A nice
that's
bleached
true,
asshole.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He's just sitting there chewing on it.
Backsack and crack. Sticking in some batter.
This doesn't taste like squid. Pork. Anyway, Dan, let's go back to the mid 17th century. Let's say you're Dutch.
Cool.
Now, since the last time...
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I'll call you Dutch because the last time I compared you to a Brit, you seemed to get rather offended.
Yes, extremely so. So we'll stick with Dutch, as I'm terrible at doing their accents also. So just yes, I'm a Dutch fisherman. Yes, of course.
Well, let's put you on a Navy ship. Now, offenses leading to this punishment could range anywhere from mutiny to simply stowing away on a ship. It was ultimately up to the captain who got punished and how. Dan, what horrible offense do you think you would do on a Dutch Navy vessel?
Wear the wrong clogs.
Curse a windmill?
Say something negative about the Queen or the King of Holland, whoever is in charge at the time, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. More likely something ridiculous, because one thing I've learned from this is they tend to do these torturous things for whatever reason they want. So let's say I stole an orange.
Stole an orange?
And orange is the national colour of Holland, so they took great offence to me stealing it.
Okay, so you were sick and tired of having scurvy, so you stole an orange and you were caught. And because your captain happens to be in a surly mood that day, he says, fuck it, Keelhaul him. And so the process begins. So what they do is they tie you up, your hands, and they tie your feet. Sometimes they'd leave you on the deck. Sometimes they'd put you up on the mast, kind of dealer's choice. And they'd hang you there either by your hands or your feet from the yard arm over the water. That's the part of the mast that holds the sail. I have found out. Didn't know that before. So
I always called it just a big wooden stick bit.
Yeah, I was just putting on, for a while I just had written down the mast that holds the sail, but that's not right. So I
the horizontal mast.
Otherwise we're going to get, emails. I'm probably going to get emails anyway, and that's fine. Yes. Anyway, you hang there by your hands or your feet. Lost my place. Now, sometimes the ship is moving. Sometimes it's not. Again, it's up to the captain and the place and time of the crime. I don't see them stopping the ship in the middle of the ocean to do this. I also don't see them making them sail if they're in, near a port. So it's kind of when and where it happens. So they take more rope, tie some to your hands, and then tie the other end to your feet. It's a long rope, or they tie several ropes. Then they wrap the rest of the rope around the bottom of the ship. Now, with the order, you are dropped into the water. Now, if the captain has a heart, he'll simply have you pushed over the edge of the ship, which could be, depending on the ship, a 20 to 80-foot drop. But, in what I've read, usually, they would drop you from the yardarm. And that could be anywhere from 80 to 160-foot drop. That could cause anything from separated shoulders, internal damage, internal bleeding, ruptured spleen, what have you. It's a long fucking fall, and it's into water. And if you're in the middle of the ocean, it's into moving water. So I just see
it's like hitting a brick wall.
Pretty much. If you're moving, then you're going to bounce too, like a stone being skipped. Anyway.
Sorry, just having
either way, just a person just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Either way, you make it into the water. Then the deckhands on the other side of the ship that are holding the rope start to pull. Now, there are a few different ways to go about this. They could go slow, or they could go fast. But we'll say, since your crime is so egregious of stealing a single orange, that the captain is in such a bad mood that he has them pull fast as they can. Now, maybe thinking, that's great, less time in the water. But no, that is actually the worst thing they could do. Because when they pull fast, your body stays in contact with the bottom, or keel, of the ship, where the name comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for all of you out there that don't know anything about ships, like me up until recently, you might think, that's not so bad, getting scraped against the bottom. Get some wood burn, maybe some splinters, whatever. And again, you would be wrong, because the longer the ship has been in the water, the more creatures that attach themselves to the keel. Now, these sea creatures are crustaceans called barnacles. And barnacles are sharp. Not like butter knife sharp. Not like David Attenborough telling you about how the rhino has a razor sharp horn, but really it's just got a lot of force behind it. It's actually not sharp at all. These guys are razor sharp. I watched a video of a guy diving into the ocean on YouTube, and all he did was he kind of like sat on the floor of the ocean where he was. It wasn't even very deep, and he barely came down, real slow, but he came down on a barnacle, and it completely split the side of his leg open. I mean, there was fucking blood everywhere. So when I say these guys are sharp, I'm not, over exaggerating how fucking sharp these animals are. These crustaceans, their shells.
See, sharper than an Irish mammy's tongue. That's such sharp, people.
So when they pull fast on the rope, you don't just scrape against the keel, you scrape against all these barnacles, which, in a sense, rip the flesh off your body. So badly that some people would be pulled up missing limbs or even decapitated.
And then you have the salt water in on top of that as well. I'd say that's...
If you live for the first one, you have salt water and God knows what else in all these wounds.
Yeah. It's like the nautical version of the Ripper thing we covered in the previous episode.
Yeah,
almost like the wall thing.
Almost like Ling Chi too, if you really think about it, because they're cutting off.
That's true. Yeah, so it's like the two of those things combined, but in salt water, all over a fucking orange.
Yeah, all over an orange. Well, you ask next time you want an orange.
I don't speak Dutch, so I don't know how that is.
That was the crime, is you were an Irishman on a Dutch naval ship.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you get pulled quickly on your back. Hopefully, God knows what might get ripped off if you were pulled with your front facing the bottom of the ship.
Penis.
Yeah, I don't really want to think about it. But let's say it was on your back. Now, your back is ripped absolutely to shreds. You're gasping for air, you're a bloody mess, and you hang there from the yardarm. Usually the ropes were threaded through pulleys on both sides of the arm for easier pulling. Not always. And you're there for however long Captain wants to keep you there. And then he yells, again. And you are dropped yet again into the water to be dragged back across the keel the opposite way. Most people got dragged underneath around 3 times before the captain said enough.
Screwed up.
Dan, yeah. I mean, you can see how bad somebody's going to be fucked up after once. And you're going to go through 2 more times. There's going to be like nothing left of you most of the time. Just, you pull it up and it's just an arm. Now, Dan, you're done being dragged under the ship. They're going to let you hang there for a while as a warning to the other crew or passengers as to what happens to anyone that steals oranges from the captain. Let's say you're still alive. There's a very good chance that in the next few days, you won't be because of the massive amount of infections that you'll get from your open wounds, and the fact that instead of getting them cleaned right away, you were forced to hang from the yardarm for possibly hours after the whole fucking thing happened. So yes, most people died. It wasn't the idea of the torture. You weren't supposed to die. But if you did, oh well.
And again, more salty air being blown on your wounds the entire time. Imagine, you know what it's like when you get a cut and just blow on it? That's really, really fucking sore. Imagine that with sea air and like your willies hanging off.
Next time you get a paper cut, shove a bunch of salt into your mouth and then on it. And then take it times 1,000,000.
Yeah.
All because you needed an orange.
It was worth it.
No.
It was a good orange.
Huh?
It was worth it. It was a good orange.
Well, that's all that matters. Yeah, but you get the citrus in those cuts.
Yeah. It's extra punishment. Squeeze your orange over your head.
Have an orange. Have your orange. All right, so that's if they pulled you fast. But what if they did pull you fast? What if they pulled you slow as to not scrape across the bottom, or at least is not as much anyways, but to bring you more to the brink of drowning? Sometimes they would even tie a cannonball to your body to make you sink a little more, so specifically so you wouldn't drag across the bottom. If this was the case, to prolong the suffering, usually in freezing cold water, the Dutch were known to shove an oil-soaked sponge or rag into your mouth before dropping you in so you could have one more short breath while under the sea before you died.
That's just, what?
So, on whether or not this actually worked,
you got a mouthful of oil.
The Dutch felt like it worked. The Dutch felt like if they shoved a oil-soaked sponge into your mouth, then the water wouldn't be able to go in, and you'd be able to suck any air that was in the sponge. So you'd get one more kind of gasp of breath. But what I found, an excerpt from a book called The Forgotten Genius, the biography of Robert Hooke, 1635 to 1703 by Stephen Inwood. Robert tried this method, and if anything, it made it more difficult to hold your breath underwater.
I wonder why.
I'm having such a hard time breathing.
Oh, God. At least you got a taste of that sweet oil before you perished.
I wonder what kind of oil. I mean, it obviously wasn't like refined.
Well, yeah, it's not as if they put like really nice, expensive Spanish olive oil or something on the thing. Like it's, you're probably talking like the oil that they used for like keeping the ship in, like wood oil or something.
Yeah, like almost like varnish.
Yeah, like that's the only oil I could think that they could possibly have. Like is.
The only positive I could see from it is maybe you get so high from sniffing it that you just don't give a fuck that you're in the water.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, especially with the Dutch, we all know what they're into. Yeah, could have been cannabis oil.
They're totally into.
Could have been cannabis oil.
Yeah, could have been cannabis oil. Then who gives a shit?
Yep.
Now you may be thinking, what did they do if it was a new boat, or had no or very few barnacles on it, or just been cleaned? Or what if it was really small and narrow? Well, I would say that instead of doing the keel hauling width ways across the ship, they would do it long ways across the ship. So instead of port to starboard or vice versa, you'd go bow to stern. And while some of these ships were between 30 and 50 feet wide, many were well over 200 foot long. So you would spend around 4 times longer underwater that way than you would if you went widthwise. So you're talking like 30 seconds to get from one side to the other widthwise. You're talking 2 minutes to go from front to back. And that might be hard to do with an oil-soaked rag shoved in your fucking mouth.
When you first said to me about keel hauling, I immediately actually thought of an image of like a figurehead. I thought it was, I can't remember what show or movie or something, somebody was tied to the front of their ship in the same fashion as a figurehead, but lower. So it was that as they were crashing through water, like it was kind of like constantly trying to get breath and getting shit kicked out of them. And I automatically assumed that was it when I initially, if you were to Google keel hauling and you see like the first images of it kind of thing, that's what I assumed it was, until I read a little bit more. But yeah. So I thought the front to back thing immediately, like, then as well.
Yeah. That would be horrible. To just be tied to the very like front of the ship, just kind of just low enough to where every time you'd have all that weight behind you. I would imagine it would end up crushing you to death against the waves. Because you hit the water is like concrete if you just hit it.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. Like, I thought it was a. Sure.
Nope, it's a lot more creative than that, I think.
Well,
be like,
Now I know what I'll be doing to torture someone.
All right, so let's go back to when this all started. There are mentions of it in the Rhodian Maritime Code, or the Lex Rhodia, by the Greeks in 700 BCE. Apparently, you can see it on painted vases from that era. I looked. I couldn't find any.
What, do you have a collection of those vases in your fucking living room or something?
I didn't have any. My collection doesn't have anybody.
I can't find any, so
I can't find any.
Keel hauling art.
I went to 3 flea markets and I didn't see any.
I'm gonna Google this shit. Keel hauling art vase. Gonna find nothing. Found nothing. I also cannot find any.
So the majority, what you can find on keel hauling, takes place between the 11th century and the very early 20th century, including voyages to and through the East Indies by Christophorus Friccius, written in 1680, where he describes the use of keel hauling several times on Royal Navy ships. There's the paint. Actually, I could find this painting. The Keel Hauling of the Ship's Surgeon of Admiral John Van Ness by Lev Petiers. I don't know why they always have to give them such long names. But this sits in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam and is dated from 1660 to 1686. the thing about this painting is you can't really see the keel hauling. I looked at the painting. I don't know if you've been able to find it or not on there.
I found it here now.
Did you? I can't really see the keel hauling. There's a lot going on in that painting.
Yeah, it's like there's like a load of people. It's like they're pointing up the air. I think it's the dude that's hanging. In a red top.
Yeah,
I think that's because it's like everybody's looking at him, him. But yeah,
and that's the thing. That to me is the most amazing thing about the painting. If this was true, and is the amount of people on other ships that were there to watch.
Yeah, watching them pointing and stuff. Yeah,
almost like it was a spectator sport. Like, oh, Jean Van Ness is getting keel hauled today. Let's go. And then you just load up in a ship and go out to. It looked like it was probably just off a dock, and I couldn't find anything about Jean Van Ness and what he had done, but apparently it was get your popcorn.
Yeah, and you see there's multiple nations' flags painted in it also. Like it's I don't know if that's Greece that I see there or something. Well, I see the French flag. I'm pretty sure I see the British flag.
Yeah. I
see the Dutch flag.
Well, yeah, of course the Dutch flag.
So everybody came to watch this shit. Yeah. It's a bunch of filthy animals.
Well, I mean that's what you did for entertainment back in the 1600s. Is and before that, there's nothing to do. No good movies out. Let's go watch somebody get tortured.
Yeah, I was gonna say today we have the Xbox. Back then we had dragging people under boats for the fun of it.
Yeah. So there's there's the very well documented case of two Egyptian men that were court-martialed after an attempted murder and were keel-hauled in September of 1882 just outside Alexandria, Egypt. Even the New York Times did a story on it, quoting an English correspondent that witnessed the entire thing. Quote, "The one upon whom the strain of the rope had fallen was apparently lifeless. His face was turned towards us. It was bleeding and torn. His clothes were hanging in shreds, and his hands were dripping with blood. His eyes were open, but they seemed to be filled with blood. The ship's bottom, covered with barnacles, rasped upon the poor devils like nails. The nose of one wretch was torn almost away. One ear was gone. He was bloody literally from head to foot." Now, after keel hauling the men again for 21 seconds, the men seemed unconscious and, quote, probably dead. The correspondent said death would have been a better fate for the men than what they had undergone, and after the officers of the ship brutally keel-hauled the two men, they offered the English correspondent cigarettes and coffee in displays of generous hospitality. Quote, "It is needless to say that we did not accept either. For my part, I should have rather seen the entire ship's company shot than accepted any hospitality at the hands of its officers." Oh, so hoity-toity. Like you didn't do horrible things.
We're gladly taking those cigarettes and coffee.
You're English. You did horrible things for centuries.
Yeah.
Oh, but these
people got
English. Keel haul. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're afraid of putting somebody around a boat, but you're not afraid to stand on an entire nation's throat for a few hundred years.
All around the world.
Yeah. Nowhere in particular.
Yeah. No.
100-year anniversary this year, as far as I remember now, of the 1922. 6th December 1922, Ireland was declared a free state from the people who apparently believe that keel hauling is bad, but didn't mind doing anything else.
The Navy was fine with it for a long time, but
they're okay with creating a famine, but not with throwing somebody in the water under a boat.
We threw their tea in the harbor.
Oh God, yeah, that certainly showed them. All right. Oh no! What will we do without our tea? No.
Drink coffee like a man.
Damn Bostonians. Bastards.
So the use of it for the Royal Navy, it seemed to die down in like the early 1700s. So that might have been why these English correspondents were so about it, because they hadn't been doing it for the past 100-some-odd years. The Dutch also stopped doing it around 1750 or so they say. The French were still using keel hauling in the mid-19th century. But they did everything for a lot longer than everybody else. They were still killing people with guillotine when Star Wars was out.
Except for fighting in World War II, but that's everything. Yeah, they gave up on that much quicker than anybody else. But anyway. No comment.
Well, by then they're just like, fuck it! We're done. Yep. So a document described a man being lashed before keel hauled, and a man would hit the water, quote, so violent as to cause serious internal injury, he would be hauled under, quote, like a drowned rat on a rope. The whole process would be repeated numerous times, 10 to 15-minute intervals. A gun would be fired between each interval to scare the victim. So you're just hanging there, waiting to be dropped, and all of a sudden, boom! Fucking gun goes off. And it's the French, it's the mid-19th century, so it's not like, a revolver. It's probably like a blunderbuss. So it's going to be loud as fuck.
I love blunderbusses. They're ridiculous. It's like, let's just combine a gun and a trumpet.
And a cannon. And a trumpet. Yeah. Very inaccurate as well. You couldn't shoot a target for shit with them. But if you hit something with it, they would disappear.
Yeah.
Because, So let's end this episode on maybe a little happier note. I was able to find evidence of one survivor. Well, technically it's two survivors of this torture. Pedro Ramon y Cajil, one of the fathers of neuroscience.
There you go.
So Pedro came from the Ramon y Cajil family, who are very large, important-wise family of science and medicine in Spain in the late 1800s. His father pushed him and his brother hard in school, but Pedro, a little bit of a rebel, ended up getting into some trouble in his late teens, and he failed a class. How dare he?
It's much worse than stealing an orange.
It's so much worse than stealing an orange. You failed a class. Doesn't say what class it was, probably PE. But instead of facing the wrath of his father, he made a pact with a friend that they would run away. So at 17, with no money, they decided to stow away on a boat called Queen and travel to South America. They were found, and since they couldn't pay the fee, they were punished with keel hauling at 17 years old. They did survive. The boat was probably mostly cleaned of barnacles, I'm guessing. That's probably how they got out of it without dying. And I don't believe it was a very big ship. So I think they kind of got luck of the draw on this one. But since they didn't die, they were allowed to stay on the ship to South America. So I read up about him for a while after I got this. He had a pretty crazy life. While on that ship, he stabbed an Italian guy. When they got to Uruguay, he joined the Revolution Army. Right. He was gone from his home for 7 years. Him and that friend were going to be executed for stealing a colonel's horse and a gun when they decided they didn't want to be in Uruguay anymore. They just wanted to leave. The friend's family had connections, and they intervened at the last moment and saved them. So he went back to Spain, became a doctor, and helped develop modern-day neuroscience.
So the guy was just a bit of a messer. And He's like the class clown who turns out to be pretty good, like
be the genius.
Yeah.
I haven't cut my grass in 2 weeks. he lived. He did all this shit. I can't get off my ass to do anything.
That's ridiculous. Sounds like he had a fun couple of weeks though.
Well, he was in Uruguay for 7 years.
Oh, 7 years. All right. I thought you were making a reference as if he did all that over his face for a couple of weeks because of the grass. So, I didn't do this in the last 2 weeks. Look at all this shit he did.
No. I just won't get off my ass and do anything. And he's runs away from home.
Fun 7 years.
Stabs an Italian guy. I don't know why they were sure to put in that he was an Italian guy, but he stabs an Italian guy.
Probably arguing over how to pronounce prosciutto or something.
Yeah. Gets to Uruguay and just joins the Revolutionary Army. It's like, what are you guys doing?
Why not?
Well, fighting for shit? Fuck yeah, let's do it. And he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go develop neuroscience.
Oh, God. I can imagine him arriving and be like, hey, have you got any combat experience? Well, I stabbed this Italian guy once. You're hired.
I survived keelhauling and I stabbed an Italian.
Yeah. I found a couple of nice little interesting references for keelhauling here as well. When I was, my favorite one is the fact that Keelhaul is a member of the G.I. Joe team. His name for character. He's an admiral. He is like the second highest ranking character in all of G.I. Joe. So, yeah.
Admiral
He's a commander. Admiral Keelhaul. He's the admiral, commander of the USS Flag aircraft carrier. Apparently,
weren't they creative?
Yep. Like, what a ridiculous name to have as one of the good guys, allegedly as well.
I don't think they really thought about what it meant. They go, ships, keelhaul. Okay, let's just use that.
Yeah, there's also the Soviet Union Operation Keelhaul. Don't know if you read about that. I was reading about it earlier on. There's Operation Keelhaul. This is directly now from Wikipedia, and forgive me if I mispronounce anything, but Operation Keelhaul was a forced repatriation of Russian civilians, i.e. non-Soviet civilians and Soviet civilians, to the Soviet Union, which were it was a forced repatriation focus on Soviet armed force POWs from Germany and the Russian Liberation Army members, and included anybody under Russia Allied control, and it was viewed as a war crime. So
were they Keelhaul?
It was just called Keelhaul. They weren't Keelhauled. Okay. The whole operation to try and bring everybody, to force these people back to the Soviet Union side of things, it was called Operation Keelhaul because they were basically forced to work in Soviet camps, and it's basically bring them back to your side through fear and threat of death and stuff like that. Like, treat them mean to keep them keen, Russian style. It's the whole thing.
Call it Operation Keelhaul because that's how horrible it is to have to be a Russian citizen.
It's basically drag them through this shit to get them to adhere to their ways.
Yeah,
is it? So it kind of makes sense,
I suppose.
But it's that in itself is kind of reading through the stuff on Wikipedia to do with it is kind of fucked up and interesting all at the same time. But yeah, I thought the G.I. Joe thing was the best one. And it was in the James Bond novel Live and Let Die.
Oh really?
Yeah, Mr. Big threatens. This is from Wikipedia though, because I'm not lazy. Apparently, Mr. Big, the chief villain, threatens to kill Bond by using a modern variation of keelhauling by dragging him across a coral reef. And in the film version of For Your Eyes Only, Roger Moore gets keelhauled across a coral reef by Christetos, or whatever way you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
So yeah, see more of it, but yeah.
Keelhauled through the coral reef. That, goddamn, coral reef can be sharp.
Yeah, it's lethal stuff. But
yeah.
This is where my expertise comes in now, is looking at popular culture side of things. The end of this shit.
Well, on so they had the movie The Mutiny on the Bounty, which I saw bits and pieces of, but they don't get into a whole lot of great detail about it. I mean, it was in the 60s, so they don't show a whole lot. But I don't know if you ever saw the show Black Sails that used to be on Stars, where they it covered the whole time of the Bahamas were kind of the port for pirates and that whole area. But Edward Teach, who was actually Blackbeard, they show him on it. He gets captured by the English Navy, and they keel haul him. Right. That's not actually what happens in real life. He doesn't actually get keel hauled in real life, but on the show. And by the time they're done with him, he is unrecognizable. He's got so many huge gashes and cuts, and parts of him are kind of just like chunked off. It's fucking graphic. And I love that show.
I've never watched it. I see here that there's a reference to one of the seasons of Vikings, which I don't know if you've ever watched that. It's an amazing show, but I never.
Oh yeah, I watched Vikings. I haven't seen the last season yet, but yeah, I watched Vikings.
I only got to watch the first 3 seasons, I think, and there's a reference here to one of the seasons. So something I haven't seen, so I'm not going to read it out. I'm not going to read past the line, but I see there's a reference to it because I don't want to know who it happens to.
If I remember right, it's more of a reference to keel hauling than it is that you actually see it. I don't remember ever seeing keel hauling on Vikings unless it was the last season, which I never got around to finish watching.
Hopefully I get to watch it, because soon enough now I hope to be able to get to watch it now with herself, because I thought it was excellent. But I'm definitely going to read more to that Operation Keelhaul thing, because I'm interested in all that kind of war stuff as a rule, because I think it's all completely fucked up, especially the Russian side of things. Like, they're just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Luckily, the use of keel hauling has stopped as far as we know. I mean, can you imagine it being on like an aircraft carrier?
No, screw that shit. Yeah. Well, even like any sort of modern boat, like, where it's like
like a Royal Caribbean cruise line.
Yeah.
Don't miss out on the pool, which is open all night. The casino closes at 2. If you go down to the poop deck, you'll see Bob keel hauled for stealing a wallet. Be sure to grab a snack at the midnight all-you-can-eat buffet.
They're going to have to call a bar keel haul now, some port thing. And
I would imagine that either in like New Orleans seems like it'd be.
So you pronounce that wrong. Sorry, it's Nolans.
I think you can only say that if you're from Louisiana.
I know,
but anywhere else you're not. Like Louisville. People in Louisville don't call it Louisville; they call it Louisville.
All right.
Yeah.
Louisville.
Welcome to Louisville. It's like that. You don't know. That's not how you don't say it right. Well, no, it's Louisville, but I'm not from there, so I call it Louisville. But I think down in New Orleans, that would probably go to the Keel Hall. You just go in and it's a jazz club, and you get drinks and syphilis.
You see, there's a place called the Keel Hall. There's a brewery called Keel Hall. Keel Hall Brewery. Keel Hall Ghost Town Brewery.
Nice. Where's that?
It's a particular beer. The brewery, it's called Keelhauling Ghost Town Brewing, and it's a Keelhauling IPA, and it gets an average of 3.89 out of 5. So, the more alcohol we can find as a reference to these torture things, then the more I should buy and consume while discussing said torture. So like, what's next on the list that I can look up? See, is there a beer related to it? I order some.
So our next episode will be the first multi-episode series. It'll be the first episode of a multi-episode series that we're going to do, and our very first serial killer. So we're going to get all true crimey on your asses. And the hint for that for everybody is think the most dangerous game.
Monopoly.
In my house.
And everybody's fucking house. Did you know there's another that Monopoly derived from a different game? Apparently, there was.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be a game. A lady came up with it. I don't remember her name, but she came up with it to show you the horrors of. I see the cat. The horrors of capitalism, and then the was it is it Milton
Hasbro
Bradley?
or whoever the hell it is, bought
Hasbro,
it,
Parker
and
Brothers,
they
whoever,
removed.
They got it and they changed it into the love of capitalism. So it's
they removed a section of it basically. I'm pretty sure it was Philip K. Dick wrote a book that was about a game similar. It might not have been might have been Stephen King or something. But anyway, I remember reading the story where the whole concept of it was that there was a board game that was along the vein of Monopoly, and it was to intentionally teach kids how to basically completely fuck up the economy, and it was to cause a fuck up in the economy later to teach them as if, this is the way you do things, kind of thing. I remember that it was a bit far fetched, it was usual with types of thing like K. Dick did.
It sounds like more of a Philip K. Dick than a Stephen King.
And it the whole thing was that it completely fucked up the economy or something. I'm probably not remembering it correctly. I'll have to look it up and read it, but it was very interesting. The whole thing is that it causes mayhem later down the line for the world, basically.
Well, if you're wanting to get a beer or whatever for the next couple episodes, I would say something sweet like baked goods.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so the credits for all our reference material can be found in show notes. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram @TorturePod. If you'd like to contact us, our email address is torturepod@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe, follow, all that good shit wherever you listen. Helps us out. Maybe one day we'll have advertisers and we can get paid to do it instead of just taking time out of our day to do it for free.
I could technically advertise myself if you so wish for now.
Could.
And thanks to our sponsors, DJ H Guitar Pedals. Name is pending at the moment.
Pending.
I don't know what I'm going to be calling it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks. See ya.
Bye-bye.